Chapter 2 Miss Stephanie Morrow. Once upon a time, in ages long since past, in the western reaches of the land of Mendelora, there lived a king, a queen, and their children, and in the same castle lived the counselors to the king. There were 12 counselors in all, wise and powerful, but among them none was as powerful or as wise as the counselor known as Gray. "Come on, Jeremy, you're going to be late." It was Russell, and he just punched me in the arm. "Out of my face, you little freak," I growled at him, turning my face away and pulling the pillow over my head. "And it's not Jeremy, it's Germaine." "Whatever," Russell replied in his bossiest tone, leaving my bedside and flipping the light switch on. A piercing yellow glare filled the room and leaked past my protective pillow barrier, burning my eyeballs. I made the scariest rumbling sound in my throat that I could muster. "Get out of my room, Russell, or else I'll tell Dad that you violated our non-aggression pact." I flung the pillow at his head, making him shriek like a little girl. He then did his best impression of a cartoon character, revving up before fleeing the room. I retrieved my pillow from the floor, then sat down on my bed to rub the sleep from my eyes. "Ugh, that boy tries my patience." "Huh," Daniil murmured with a laugh from the top bunk. "You sound like a Jane Austen novel when you talk like that." "He's a nincompoop, as the Brits would say," I snorted. "The Brits don't actually say that." "Whatever. But he is a nincompoop." "He'll grow out of it, I hope," Daniil replied, turning over and regarding me with heavy-lidded eyes. "But we really do need to get up, Maney." Daniil is the only one in the world allowed to call me Maney. It's better than Jeremy by a mile. "I'm up," I said, my head drifting a bit. "I'm trying to be awake." I gave the mattress above me a sly glance before punching it with a fist. "Hypocrite." "I'm moving. Just give me a moment." I grabbed my watch off my nightstand and put it on. "Mr. Samuels is teaching my history class today instead of Miss Andrews." "Oh, really?" Daniil chuckled as she hopped down from her bunk and flipped through her closet for her school uniform. She pulled her skirt off the hanger, then turned to face me with her eyebrows raised and her face twisted into a snooty pout. "Oh my," she drawled comically. "Is he going to try to make history fascinating?" I smiled and drawled back. "Class, we'll be learning about the Normandy beach landing on D-Day today." "'Cause World War II is fun to learn about," Daniil finished, and we both giggled hard. I'm glad Daniil understands my weird humor. She stripped out of her pajamas and donned her school uniform with a sigh. "I kind of miss Mr. Samuels subbing for my history class. He's really sweet, even if he can only say about 9 words an hour." I smirked. "I never said he wasn't sweet. I just wish it was Miss Andrews today and not him. She makes all history interesting, even the boring bits like Normandy." Daniil grabbed her glasses and put them on. "Is she helping with Career Day today?" "Yeah," I yawned and stretched, stalling before getting dressed. "What do you want to be when you grow up?" "Very funny," Daniil replied. "Remember that they're going to be having the Votech school people there." She turned and smiled sweetly at me. "Plus, I heard that Sean Ellis is going to be helping out." I reddened and stood up, stretching away the last of my sleep. Why would I care whether he's helping out? "Don't play stupid, Germaine. You made a cartoon of his face inside your binder cover. You only caricature people that you like." "I was just practicing," I lied. I did like him. I'd liked him all year. "He's got a funny face, and his ears stick out, so he's easy to caricature. You always go for the feature that stands out the most, then you exaggerate it." I spread my hands out. "That's all." "Uh-huh," Daniil replied, not even deigning to look at me while she fastened her own watch to her wrist. "You keep telling yourself that, darling. But let me tell you, it works better all around to have the guys come to you. Just wait for them, you'll see." "How old-fashioned of you. That doesn't work for me," I said with a frown, as I got out of my pajamas and donned my own school uniform. "I'm not gorgeous." Before Daniil could protest, there came a knock at the door. My father's voice boomed. I have hot pancakes ready, but I need children to eat them for me. Germaine, Daniil, hurry up, please. Daddy, Mamie thinks she's not gorgeous, Daniil shouted through the door. I gave my sister the dirtiest look I could muster, but I heard my father chuckle as he rapped on the wall outside our room. All three of my daughters are gorgeous, inside and out, he replied. Some just know it better than others. I heard him turn on his heel and head for the stairs. Now move along. The school lay only a few miles away through the town of Shanesville, which meant stopping at about 1 billion traffic lights that were never green when we approached them. The intersection closest to our driveway boasted a traffic light that had never let us go straight through, even once, since we moved here. If I remember my math classes correctly, you should have something like a 50-50 chance of making it through the light on approach. But I guess it's like kids putting their shoes on the correct feet. There may be a 50-50 chance, but it never happens. Still, our ride to school was usually short. With Dad driving and me in the passenger seat, I couldn't object to the seating arrangement, but the noise from the back of our minivan would sometimes reach a fever pitch of chaos. This morning was not the worst it had ever been, but it still rankled me. Russell had his tablet out and was playing Spaceship Wars with the volume at 1,000, and the twins were arguing about whose sandwich was bigger. Daniil, as always, kept a prim silence, staring out the window with her chin in her hand. Sometimes I wondered what she thought about as the world turned around her. Something loftier than my normal thoughts, I imagine. That would just be her way. I tried my best to tune out my siblings' noise by doodling birds on my English notebook, and when that failed, I glanced over at Dad to see if the racket annoyed him. Dad's head swayed back and forth to some song inside his brain, and he seemed oblivious to the noise in the back. I raised my eyebrows at him and tapped the armrest. "Penny for your thoughts?" I asked. After a long moment, he acknowledged my question with a smile. "If you ever have children of your own, you'll learn to love the noise, kiddo." I gave him a wry smile and rolled my eyes. "I don't think I ever could," I replied. "Couldn't have kids or couldn't bear the noise they make?" "Bear the noise," I said. "I don't know if I'll ever get married." Dad raised an eyebrow at me. "Oh? Any reason why not? Just curious." "I don't know, I slumped back in my seat in thought. I feel like I'd have to do something big and important before I get married, but I don't know what that would be. I mean, they're having career day at school today, but I still have no clue what I want to be when I grow up. I should know by now, right?" Dad laughed softly. "Sometimes I wish I knew what I wanted to be when I grew up," he said, which made me laugh too. "I thought that I needed to do something big and important when I was younger, but it turns out that having a family was that big and important thing. Not saying I didn't do other important things, but that was the most important." He elbowed me. "Chin up. You've got some time yet to decide how to dispose of your life." I frowned. All the adults I knew said the same thing about family. They always said it was the biggest thing they had done with their lives, and that they wouldn't change that for the world, but it still felt cliché for some reason. I lapsed into silence and looked away, watching the restaurants and garages and car dealerships slip by outside my window, thinking my own thoughts. An image popped into my head. An image of us showing up for career day at school and finding a booth advertising for Marriage and Parenthood Incorporated. I could see Daniil racing straight for it. She would make a great mother, that was for sure. Which only brought my mind back to my own mother, a thought I quickly squashed. The low brick building of our school came into view around the last turn, and everyone gathered up their backpacks. I am thankful for our school. Bradley Samuels is a charter school for lower to middle income families, and the people there are much nicer than the crappy middle school we left a few years back. Everyone at Bradley Samuels is nicer. That is, except for Tony Fallon. At least he leaves me alone now. Dad pulled to a stop in the school's loading zone and leaned over to me. "Don't despair of doing wonderful things with your life, sweetheart." He touched my cheek, and for the first time that morning I noticed the concern in his face. I looked at him with a strange uncertainty gnawing my heart. "You okay?" He smiled at me, but the smile was a thin one. Your birthday is coming up soon. Yeah? Yeah. I grinned at him, trying to cheer him up. Are you having trouble thinking of a gift for me? He said nothing more about it, but waved me out of the car. Have a good day, everyone. I've got to run to work. I liked to imagine that we exited our car like those soldiers at Normandy, trooping out of their landing vehicles in orderly fashion into the freezing water of the English Channel. Instead, the reality was always a disappointment. Danielle moved to the door, and Russell tried to clamber past her at the same time. Then the twins bottlenecked between the two middle bucket seats, still arguing about whose sandwich was larger. It took a whole minute to get everyone out of the car, and not without a fair share of shoving and complaining. As we struck up the drive towards the front door and joined the crowds of other kids moving in the same direction, I turned my head for one last glance at my father. He sat staring after us through the open window. My heart skipped a beat in vague alarm. His face had drawn into a tight mask of worry that he'd managed to conceal until now. I couldn't tell what he was worried about, but the steady gaze he fixed on me made me feel like I was the cause. I waved to him and quickly rushed inside. Sean Ellis was helping with Career Day. My heart skipped a beat as I watched him leave his locker with a stack of flyers in his hand. So what if his ears were a little bigger than normal, or his nose for that matter? He was the most gorgeous boy I'd ever seen, and as I slipped off my spring coat and stuffed it into my locker, I kept half an eye on him from down the hall. He disappeared around the corner into the assembly room, and I felt a jab in my ribs. Danielle's smile materialized at my side as she removed her coat, too. She smirked into her locker. I told you he was helping out. Now you get to watch him the entire day if you want to. Shut up, I replied with a hard blush, snatching my backpack off the floor and swinging it back over my shoulder. I smoothed out my white polo shirt and felt my hair for any stray locks. Danielle laughed at me. Smitten, she said before walking off towards her classroom. See ya, Maney. Don't embarrass yourself. See ya, I murmured back. I wished that Career Day had been open to Danielle's class too, but I knew she was still a little bit young to join us. Funny, because she had always been far more entrepreneurial than I, so it felt like she had more right to be there. Maybe the Babysitters Association of America would make an appearance and I could tell them about Danielle. As for me, I felt more than usually awkward around him. I steeled myself and walked into the assembly room. My comfort around crowds has never been great, and I shrank into myself as I became immersed in a mass of my peers, all talking at once. The fact that I knew most of them didn't change anything. They all seemed eager to be here, anxious to make some sort of good impression on the professional people at the different booths ranged around the room. I saw a dizzying array of businesses, trades, and schools represented, each of them with their own banner and table, where suited men and women waited for us to approach. I would have tried to shrivel into a corner had not my guidance counselor, Maria Gutierrez, spotted me from where she stood at a nearby table and flagged me down. I like Miss Gutierrez, but she sometimes tries too hard with me. She's a pretty, dark-skinned woman in her 30s with the poofiest black hair I've ever seen, and she always calls me by my full name. I do appreciate that. Germaine, there you are! She cried in her slight Mexican accent, beckoning to me. I've been looking for you. Hi, Miss Gutierrez, I said, sidling over to her and looking around. What did you want me for? Well, I was roaming around the booths before you got here, and I noticed a few that looked promising, she suggested helpfully, as she handed me a sticky name tag. I glanced down and noticed the beautiful cursive lettering of my name, done up in red magic marker. Suddenly, Germaine didn't look quite so plain anymore. You make my name look nice, I said, inspecting the tag before peeling it off and sticking it to my shirt. Miss Gutierrez blushed. Oh, thank you, chica. You saw some booths that looked promising? Yes, I did, especially if you were still interested in an art career. I remember your drawings, they're quite good. You brought them with you, yes? Sean's wide-eared caricature in my notebook flashed into my mind, and I blushed. Yes, I did bring them. The good ones, anyway. Some of them I don't even show to my sister. Miss Gutierrez laughed. That's to be expected. We only want to show our best to others, right? She put a hand on my back and steered me toward the far wall. 2 schools are here that offer excellent graphic and industrial design programs. I figured you could start there and work your way around. Thanks, I replied, deflating a little. It was true that I wanted to find a good arts program to take in college, but Miss Gutierrez always told me there was no money in traditional art, and that I should concentrate on graphic design. I don't know why money is always such a big deal, but I don't want to be an artist for the money. I do it for the joy of the thing, that's why I've always done it. Sure, I'd sold a couple pieces here and there to friends of my family, but that's not the point. A few months ago, I drew a huge mural of a fortress on poster paper, based on a dream I had once. I did the whole thing just for fun. Sometimes even Daniil can't understand why I do things like that. Maria Gutierrez found a new target and flitted away after flashing me an apologetic smile, and I found myself wandering among the tables by myself. The nearest table was the Shanesville Community College booth. I greeted the man sitting there as I took a flyer. He talked and I tried to listen, but I couldn't remember anything he said. As soon as I saw their limited arts program, I moved on. The next table was not much better. A Shanesville private college for kids from wealthy families. I could tell that from the pictures of their campus. My dad liked to say that the more trees and grass you see in the brochures, the more money you pay to go there. I don't know if he was joking or if that's really true, but this place looked expensive, and I know that my family is not very wealthy. After I abandoned the tables Miss Gutierrez had chosen for me, I ran into Chrissy Summers while she was on her way to the Votech table. I was glad for an anchor in the crowd, someone to focus my scattered attention. "Sheesh, this is a crush," Chrissy remarked over the noise of conversation as she took my arm. Her blonde hair hung even messier than usual around her skinny shoulders, but her blue eyes burned with merriment, and I could feel the bounce in her step. "They have a baking class at the Votech school," she continued, doing her little happy dance and swinging me around. "And Miss Simon is teaching it. You know that's going to be fun." "I'll bet it is, if you like to cook, of course," I replied. I suck at cooking. "You can't even make toast?" I gave her a little chuckle. "I mean real cooking." Chrissy snorted. "You only say that because you messed up Daniil's birthday cake last year. Get over it, girl. You're better than you think you are." That's not the only reason I hate cooking, but I let it slide. Mama taught me to cook, and every time I do, it reminds me of her. That's why I really hate it. My mother was the best cook I know. I tugged on Chrissy's arm. "Have you seen any schools around here that have a real arts program? Miss Gutierrez is trying to push me into some dorky graphic design gig that I don't want, even though I've told her before that it's not my thing." Chrissy frowned. I don't know, although I haven't been looking." I sighed. "Maybe there isn't one." With a laugh, Chrissy tossed her head and looked at me. "You despair too easily, Germaine. Maybe you just haven't looked hard enough yet." "Maybe." I started to sigh again, but a banner in the corner of the room caught my eye, and I stopped. I disengaged my arm from Chrissy's and sent her on her way to the Votech school's table, then picked my way across the crowd to the corner. The banner read, Shanesville In-Home Cooperative Services, and it hung over a small table, behind which sat a heavily tanned woman in her late 40s. Or maybe her 50s? 60s? It was impossible to tell. She looked old and ageless at the same time. Her hair curled out in a wild shock of auburn ringlets, and the extended sun exposure had left her skin spotted and slightly wrinkled. Her eyelids drooped low like she may have been a pot smoker in an earlier life, and her peasant dress lent her a definite hippie air. But her grin captivated me, and the hand she extended was warm and inviting. "Hi, I'm Stephanie Morrow," she said in a gratifying drawl as we shook hands. "Miss Anderson?" she continued, looking at my name tag. "Germaine Anderson?" "Yeah, that's me," I replied dryly. "The only Germaine in this entire freaking building." The woman laughed pleasantly and gestured for me to sit in the chair fronting the table. "I saw you come all the way across the room to me. Was there something in particular that caught your eye?" I blinked at her. I found myself completely tongue-tied. Why had I come over here again? And why had this woman been watching me from across the room? I cleared my throat and started over again. Honestly, I saw the name and I had no idea what in-home cooperative services meant. That's a pretty big mouthful. What in the world do you do? Stephanie Morrow grinned and leaned forward. I would say something like, I save the world one child at a time, or some such thing, but that sounds vague. And really cheesy. She smiled at me. Too cheesy for your taste too, yes? I laughed out loud. You must know me better than I thought you did, I replied, amused. What do you really do? Stephanie spread her hands out on the table, palms up. I work in a very special field, Miss Anderson, one that helps children. Children that have disorders of various sorts, disabilities and such. You follow me? I nodded. I follow. I'm a coordinator, or what we call in our business a facilitator. What that means is that I work with different state agencies that give funding to help disabled children. I work with the families of those children, and I go out and I handpick people to help those kids in their homes. The person I pick is paid with government money to help families in need of services. A smile lingered in the corner of her mouth. Still with me? I nodded again, fascinated. Yeah, I get it. You find, therapists and stuff to work with disabled children in their homes, right? Stephanie frowned for a moment before shaking her head. No, Germaine, not therapists, not professionals. I go out and find people, just normal, everyday, compassionate people. People who want to help. They don't need any sort of special skills or anything like that. They're just ordinary people that I find, and we use public money to pay them. I blinked again in surprise. You mean, you just find a person you like, and you offer them a job in someone's home to help a child? Stephanie leaned back in her chair again. Well, we get references and do criminal background checks, but essentially, you're right. I pick people that are good one-on-one with kids, are compassionate and kind, patient, loyal, etc. She gestured to me. Someone like you, perhaps. I chuckled under my breath. Like me? Huh. Maybe someone like my sister, but I don't know about me. I mean, I'm the oldest of 5, so I guess I know how to take care of kids and all, but there you go, Stephanie broke in, a twinkle in her eye. You've changed a diaper before. You've rocked a baby to sleep. You know how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Bingo, you're qualified. It's not that difficult of a job to wrap your head around, Miss Anderson. The biggest demand of this job is that you listen to what these families say they need and then provide it. You need to listen to these kids, see past their foibles, and understand that they are people. They are people with voices that need to be heard. She leaned forward again, her face still friendly but somehow intense. Are you a good listener? I was taken aback by her directness. I think I am. It sounds like an interesting position. I found myself being drawn into her enticing orbit, like I was a fish on the end of her line and she was reeling me in. I feel like you're trying to recruit me. Stephanie threw her head back and let out a delightfully throaty laugh, breaking the spell of the moment. Dearie, this is a career day fair. That's the only reason I'm here, to recruit. This is a job that fits perfectly around a high schooler's schedule. Gets you extra cash on a regular basis, gets you work experience to put on your resume. It's a win-win. She rose to her feet. The question is, will you take it? I smiled, faltered, then blushed hard. She was recruiting me. My mouth opened, but it was a long time before any words came out. I thought about the money I could make to pay for art school, to pay for more art supplies, to get me to where I wanted to go. Perhaps this was the opportunity to choose my direction in life. You know what? Stephanie's eyes twinkled. What do I know, Miss Anderson? I think I'll take it.